A good evening to you all once again. Those who have just joined us, you're most welcome. Today is a special day. Thank you all for taking off your time to be with us this evening. And you're most welcome to this session of the National Mobility Think Tank, organized by the Science, Technology, and Innovation Secretariat, Office of the President. In case you can hear me, you can give me a thumbs up or give me a notification to know that I am being heard loud and clear. Wonderful. Thank you, Ferris. Thank you, Rodney. I'm now going to request Rolex Mocheka to lead us in an opening word of prayer as we start this think tank session this evening. Rolex, you can unmute and lead us in our prayer.
Yeah, I hope you can hear me. Yeah, if you can all hear me, good evening, everyone. Let's pray. Almighty God, we want to thank you for this day and this time you've given us to come together for this session of the think tank for the e-mobility sector. We pray that you will direct and be with everyone here in this session, and for those who are yet to join, that they will join, that will not have any difficulties in technical issues here, and that what we are going to discuss or listen will be able to understand to help us take the e-mobility transition in Uganda in the next step. Yeah, thank you, God, and may you bless everyone, and with us in this discussion. Pray this in the name of God. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Rolex. Once again, you're all most welcome to this session of the National Mobility Think Tank, organized by the Science, Technology, and Innovation Secretariat, Office of the President. Today, with us, we have guest speakers from Siemens Stiftung, Mr. Sebastian Gross, the Project Manager in Social Entrepreneurship, and Ms. Mara Kobel, the Deputy Head of Social Entrepreneurship Department and Program Lead in Mobility at Siemens. I will give them an opportunity to introduce themselves much deeper as they dive into the presentation for today. Without much further ado, I will invite them to speak to the tank and take it on from here. Over to you, Mara and Sebastian.
Thank you very much, Alan. It's a great pleasure for us that we're allowed to share our thoughts with you and speak to you. So we have prepared a small presentation for you. I can as well briefly switch on my camera so you can see me. I'm based in Munich, Germany, working for Siemens Foundation. And then we actually don't want to present for too long because we really would like to listen to your contributions and as well to the questions and comments you have on what we have prepared. So Sebastian is going to share the screen while I am starting, and then we're switching roles. I don't know, Sebastian, I just see kind of like, now it's better. So exactly, so we want to talk today about e-mobility, obviously, and especially research and development in e-mobility, why it's so important to have like good and sound research and development programs to arrive at a good product market fit and sustainable mobility solutions. So we have a funding program that's open, but I want to as well share some thoughts and some learnings from previous projects. So first of all, I will quickly touch on what Siemens Foundation is, because like, of course, you know Siemens, the company, but many people don't know that there's a foundation as well. Then focus a bit on the work we do with social enterprises and the e-mobility program. Touch on some insights on Western Kenya, and then of course the exciting part, there's a funding opportunity open at the moment and Ugandan companies are eligible to apply. So Sebastian will focus on that in the end of the presentation. So exactly, so Siemens Foundation. So we're a non-profit foundation, which was founded or started by Siemens, the corporate, in 2008. And the idea is to support sustainable social development. And our topics are social entrepreneurship, education, and cultural exchange and understanding. And the working areas we're circling around is climate and sustainability, connected societies, and essential services. And you can see that e-mobility or mobility as such, of course, has like strong stakes in climate and sustainability, essential services. So mobility is really important to achieve the SDGs and have connectivity, but as well to connect society. So it fits very well to our focus areas. Do you want to? Yeah, we have like around 50 employees. We're based in Munich, but actually our regional focus for the e-mobility program is mostly Eastern Africa. And so Sebastian and I both work in the social entrepreneurship department. And there we actually support social enterprises. So what do we mean with like social enterprise first? So normally it's like for-profit companies, for example, startups that have a strong impact mission. So we always say that, let's say, the ecological or the social or the economic impact for the target group must be as important for the company as their own, let's say, benefit they have through doing business. And how do we support these companies? So we give financial support. So it's either grants or sometimes as well, like here, research or project financing, non-financial support. Some people call it technical assistance. So there's training and mentoring programs, capacity development. In e-mobility, it could be on research methodology, but as well on automatization, on climate finance. So topics that are relevant to the target group. And then we help as well building the ecosystem. For example, like maybe what we're doing now or what you're doing through the webinars, data sharing and reports. We sometimes support or organize conferences. So everything that can be done that the ecosystem as such has like, has the potential to thrive. And the sectors we're active in is water and hygiene, e-mobility, and clean energy. So you can see, of course, they're a bit like distinct and still they're very much interrelated as well. Do you want to go to the next slide? Yes. So there's like some very small examples. So there's actually in Uganda and Mityana region, there's like, we are part of a bigger consortium, which is called Team Up. The goal is to improve the livelihoods for young people. So Siemens Foundation is taking care of a water-based project there, but there is as well an innovation fund and like entrepreneurship trainings, as well as family planning and agri-business trainings. We do have a program on smart energy solutions, which is implemented in 8 African countries. So this time, Uganda is not one of the focus countries. And then, for example, in Ghana, there's a big e-mobility project. They, like our partners there are like building electric bicycles, as you can see in the photo, locally. Exactly. And now, so what are we doing in the e-mobility program? So we're one of the 3 programs of the foundation. And for the next 3 years, we heavily focus on research and development. So why are we doing that? We want to support social enterprises from e-mobility and the sectors along the value chain to conduct good R&D projects so that they have good products in the end. Then we have a program on impact scaling. That's maybe a little bit like after R&D for a bit older companies. So we support companies from the mobility sector to start scaling, especially like impact scaling. So job creation, ecological impact, local production. So once like the companies have their proven product and their business model, there's a program they can apply to, so we can see what we can do to help them to the next level. And then again, ecosystem support. We can share some links and webinars with you later that we do from Siemens Foundation. We really believe that there's a lot of data out, but we need to bring people together. Okay, so now, because I think you're all mobility enthusiasts as we are, I thought I'm gonna share, because this R&D always sounds a bit like abstract. So what do we mean with like research and development? So I thought I share some insights from a pilot project that some partner companies implemented in Western Kenya. So it's Lake Victoria region, like Nyanza. The data are from like, let's say 2020, 2021. So it's like it's maybe like 2 years old, but I still think it's quite relevant and quite informative of how that project was designed, and as well about all the learnings that were generated. So first, I think it's maybe interesting to talk about the setup. So our project partner that we supported is like a solar company. So they have like different solar hubs where the bikes can be charged, but they do have as well another solar business. So they're like charging fishing lanterns. So when they decided that they want to try and pilot electric mobility, they, let's say they designed a research program, meaning they had like different vehicles they wanted to test, mostly for the business model, but as well for the technical implications, because this is like rural Kenya, so the roads are quite rough. So it was clear it will be very interesting to see how the users react, how do the bikes perform. So in the end, there were like motorbikes, and today I'm mostly focusing on the motorbikes, but there were as well cargo bicycles. There were some outboard engines, like boat engines for fisher boats, and as well as small electric truck. So like they had a range of different products, and wanted to see, can they go to market with that? And like in the end, so business modeling, what did they do? In the end, it's really important to know the user. So in the case of these motorbikes, it's of course boda boda drivers. So the company, together with their partners, they did survey, like interviews with the riders. So like those data that I'm showing you, or some of the data, they interviewed 70 individual riders on their attitude and motivations towards e-mobility, their financial situation, and as well payment preferences and capacities. So it was really kind of like a baseline, like before the riders even were renting e-motorbikes. And there were some, let's say, some interesting insights. So in that area, or those riders that were interviewed, they were mostly using the bike for transporting people, not so much goods. Many of the riders there actually currently owned their bike, which of course is important information, because when you own the bike, you're maybe not going to switch to e-mobility before your current bike breaks. So that means like that maybe even the client base for like leasing of motorbikes is not that big in that area, or you just know you have to focus on a smaller portion of the market. Then almost 40% were able to acquire their bikes through direct purchase. So there are people who are actually able to do that purchase. They don't need maybe like Tugende or Watu services like these Paygo providers. And when like buying a bike, it was mostly durability they were looking for. And of course, the riders were as well asked for their challenges. So I think you can all relate. Fluctuating fuel prices and high fuel consumption, of course, was a pain point, and as well the maintenance of the motorbike in case of breakdowns. So here you can see one of these hubs of the company that we worked with. As said, it's not only for e-mobility because it's quite big systems, but they have as well other charging businesses as well. And so these riders that were interviewed on the perception of e-mobility, it was like, it came out that somehow they're really affluent, like they like to be like, let's say, modern, and e-mobility is like this new and flashy thing, but somehow they were as well reluctant because still it's a new technology, and then they were not sure about the battery, so there were trust issues. So most of the riders that were asked from this group of 70 people actually didn't really want to acquire a bike. So there was kind of this like back and forth. It was clear that there's a lack of knowledge on e-mobility, and but some, like 50% of people, would be willing when their, let's say their Bajaj bike is maybe out of use because the engine is broken, they would be willing to convert it. Then there was some data collected on the financial situation that I'm not gonna like present today. For example, there was like, how much income do they actually make? Are they willing to pay loans? What's their current loan thing? So you see whatever information you need as a company, it's good to ask those kind of questions, as well as establish the trust with the riders that you can get that get information. So when then developing business models, because that was the reason those data were generated, the company we worked with, they had like some working entry assumptions. So first, because the bikes were kind of new, they didn't want to like sell them or for pay-go, because they had to test first. So they said, okay, they want to go with a daily leasing model as a popular option, because then the riders don't need to kind of sign like too long contracts or something. Then they were certain that the riders would be able to save money because reduced operation costs. So that was something they wanted to track as well. They were expecting that the bikes reduce the fuel cost by at least half. And they were expecting as well that the riders were fully licensed by NTSA, so it's National Transport and Safety Association. So in the end, from what the limitations were, it was clear that like the riders actually prefer to own the bike and not to lease it. So the ownership model they were testing kind of were like a limitation, because from like, let's say, like the whole group of riders, some already own a bike and others are in pay-go plans. So like the group you can still work with when you do daily leasing is actually not so big. Then they knew as well that the terrain, cargo, speed, and energy consumed is a limitation in that area, as well battery range, and the hesitation and the lacking electric vehicle skills of the riders. And then exactly, so now I want to share some learnings. So that what they did was over like, let's say almost like a year, they did extensive testing. So like developing different leasing prices, different business models, riding the bikes in like hard terrain, in the rain, in sun. So really in a controlled environment, like really pushing the bikes and as well pushing the riders, noting down all the breakdowns of the batteries, all the breakdowns of the bikes. Were there any other issues, like interviewing the riders regularly, the ones that are like leasing the bikes, about the perception, what's the problems, why do they stop leasing? So let's say getting lots of data. Some, for example, of the assumptions, it was clear they were actually wrong, because, for example, many motorbike riders didn't have like a driver's license, which can be liability problem when you lease out a bike. So they realized, okay, there's even some hurdles they didn't consider in the market before. And then from, let's say, these learnings, that is still to say, if we really want to increase penetration in the market, these kind of use models, like leasing models, they actually limit the uptake. So if you really want to kind of increase penetration of e-mobility in the market there, you need to find an ownership model. Let's say maybe work with some asset financiers to really give the people the possibility to own the bike. Then they said the battery range. Remember, this is like 2 years ago, so I think many things happen in the market. But back then, the battery that was in that bike, they said it has to be substantially improved, because it's like some riders had to swap twice per day and they were not so willing to swap that often. Then it was important to have different business models to suit different user needs. So I can explain what I mean with that. So they found out that like some riders do like more, they call it town service. So maybe so they were delivering sausages or very light products in quite small distances, so not heavy loads. And those riders preferred to have like to pay per battery use, because like they use the bike only lightly. And then there were riders that normally drove people like longer distances, and those riders preferred to have a battery flat rate, because those were the riders who maybe had to change like twice per day. So they were not so motivated to pay twice per day for swapping. So they really wanted this kind of like package that like covered everything. So even if they had to swap 3 times per day, everything was covered. So the company like we worked with, they realized, okay, they need to have like different offers, because that actually helps people to find the right price. Like with the airtime, or like when you have a phone, you know, are you a heavy user? How much data do you need? So to have like some options there. Then, of course, I think it's not so surprising is like the charging stations expansion and charging station problem. Like you need a small swap network, otherwise the riders always have to come to the hub. And as well as skills development, both of the rider, but as well for maintenance, so that in the end, the company offered like some small training courses for repair shops like Chuakali and some to kind of upskill so that they were able to do at least basic service for the bikes. So exactly, and this is like, let's say it's just like a small, let's say small showcase of when you kind of, like the company wanted to start e-mobility, but it did it in a very, let's say, systemic way of always like getting data and like kind of basing, like feeding their business decisions they did, like what kind of price point for the lease or for like repairs and something. So they always based that on the data they generated throughout the project. Okay, now Sebastian is gonna take over. I see you want me to share. Let me do that.
Yes, maybe it's better.
Yes.
If you can share.
Can you see it? But it's not in presentation mode yet, sorry.
Yes, I can see it. It's not in presentation mode, as you said.
Is it now in presentation mode, or what
Yeah,
do you see?
now it's been in presentation mode, but it's the first slide. But you can click to get to the right slide. But in the meantime, I want to say good evening to everyone, and thank you very much, Ellen, for having us, for inviting us to speak about testing and piloting in e-mobility, and thank you, STI, for inviting us as well. Now, based on the learnings we had from the project Mara was mentioning, we talked to different companies across sub-Saharan Africa about a product and about the business development, and we realized, okay, research and development is heavily needed, because what is the case is usually if you start a business, you get to a point where you get investments, and investments want to see revenue on their investment as soon as possible. So some companies or many companies get pushed to the market too soon, which means, of course, the product does not fit the local market. It did work in a closed environment, but if you give it to actual customers, you have some challenges, and sometimes also the business model did not work out properly. So the business model would need more redefining, and you would need more time to get all the information, feedback from the customers, collect data, and so on. So that's why we designed the research and development program, which is open for Uganda and Ghana, for companies who are working in the e-mobility sector. I will talk a bit more later on what we exactly mean by e-mobility sector, but I want to focus first on the different aspects of the program we think is relevant for the companies. So first of all, of course, as mentioned, we want to increase the product market fit. So that the product really fits to the roads, to the use cases, or to the customers, because from our experience, some companies had challenges with that. Then, of course, the customer feedback is very important, because customers are king in terms of payments. So if you want to start generating revenues, you need to have customers, and the customer feedback, of course, is very important. So getting data on the utilization of your product or your service is very important. Or like Mara also explained from Western Kenya, getting feedback on the different business models that are necessary to attract customer is very important. And then also, of course, we want to give also later stage companies the opportunity to adapt their product or service for new customer segments, which means primarily for example, base of the pyramid customers, so that they can increase their social impact with the product by reaching more vulnerable, more vulnerable customer segment. But what the program also offers is to give the companies more time to kind of develop their internal business structure and their overall business, because if you generate more learnings on when you start engaging with customers, you also get learnings on your organizational structure and where are some pain points, with what kind of expertise do you probably need, what kind of structures should be more sleek, for example, something like that. So there you get a lot of information when you start engaging with customers and go beyond a specific number of bikes or a product in the market. You realize, okay, the organizational structure needs to be in a specific type to be ready to scale your product. Then, of course, we want to support enterprises also to become investment ready by having a product market, a market tested product that is ready to scale. And then at the end, we also want to support the companies to develop their intellectual property and also support them in how to save their intellectual property against competitors. And we also want to support you in collecting data through, for example, IoT to attract further investment. And data becomes more and more important. It's of course on one hand important for your business, so that you can adjust your business or business model based on the feedback from on your bike or on the customer behavior. But also in future, if you think about climate finance or something like that, data is key if you want to tap into that market as well. So when we speak about the R&D projects, we really would like to see companies who are already operational in the e-mobility sector. And e-mobility, we define e-mobility along the value chain of 3 different sectors, which is batteries, charging infrastructure, and the third one is everything around electric vehicles and the technology for electric vehicles. And companies along the value chain, starting from the input, so from the assembling of the products to the recycling or second use cases, are welcome to apply for our program. So what we're looking for is companies at an early stage who kind of have an R&D project in the area of market gaps, which means they want to develop a market tested solution. Then we also offer early stage companies or also later stage companies to apply for R&D project to increase the social and ecological impact, which means that, for example, the design of the product, service, or business model has a greater social and ecological impact. And what we mean with social and ecological impact, I will explain a bit further in the next slide. And then we also invite so-called ecosystem services to develop and pilot relevant support structures. What we mean with support structures is, for example, maker spaces to give early stage companies the opportunity to kind of develop their first prototypes, or also what Mara also mentioned is pay-go providers, so like asset financiers, to kind of pilot a project with e-mobility solutions to get confident in the e-mobility sector. And the outcome of the R&D project would be a final report as a result, and companies who will be selected should also present the results at our Spotlight On series. And they should share the learnings, they should share, for example, the methodologies. But what we don't need, and of course we want to secure or protect your IP, is we don't ask you to share confidential data. We want you to share learnings from the project, so that the overall sector also kind of benefits from the R&D projects. So we think that not every company needs to fail with the same research project, for example, about batteries or the electric vehicles, but that the whole overall sector can learn from some learnings from R&D projects. That's why we also will sign an NDA with the companies who are going to apply or get the R&D project funding. So what we mean with the impact. So if you apply with an R&D project focusing on increasing your social and ecological impact, it can touch different aspects. So for example, if you want to increase the local value creation, so local value chains in Eastern Africa, and find out how to, for example, what kind of aspects of your product can be sourced locally, can be produced locally, and what kind of products need to be imported and how far can that go. This could be, for example, a research project which can be submitted under this program, and we are willing to support you with that. Then it could be also around circularity, for example, It could be also around circularity to find out, okay, what is the second use about batteries? What is the second use of a bike? About retrofitting, what do we do with internal combustion engine vehicles? So with ICE vehicles, how can we work with ICE vehicles? Because if we introduce electric e-vehicles, of course, there will be a lot of ICE vehicles will be not used anymore. And then, of course, generating higher income for basic to pyramids clients, or how to increase the CO2 savings, for example. So those are all social ecological impacts that could be addressed with an R&D project. The application process looks like that. So at the beginning, Siemens Stiftung, so Mara and myself offer pre-consultancy or pre-feedback round where companies who have a project idea in mind can reach out to Siemens Foundation and get in touch with us to get a first feedback on whether the project idea gets into the right direction, or we can provide you some feedback from our learnings, from our experience, if you might need to adjust a bit on your design or need to focus on some aspects. So that's meant with pre-consultancy and feedback. And there at that stage, we also during the call we schedule with you, we'd also check some hard facts about, okay, is your company actually eligible to apply for the call? And then at the first stage, we ask you to submit an offer with an R&D project idea. So it doesn't need to be elaborated fully at that stage. So 2 pages in a Word document or 6 to 8 slides in a PowerPoint presentation would be enough, so that the team from Siemens Stiftung gets an impression or idea what you plan to do. Then some information on the budget and duration. Then a proof and description of your prototype. So we want to make sure that you do have a prototype. That there's a prototype available, because we don't fund companies at idea stage. We fund companies already with a prototype in the market, but still very early. But companies also need to demonstrate that they have fast traction in the market, so that they have already worked with some customers, and need to be able to demonstrate that they have generated some first revenues with the product. Then companies need to be registered in the countries we're working with. So in this regard, in Uganda, and we would also like to see the CVs of the research team. Then we have a round of feedback where we again provide you some information on your proposal, on your project idea, and then we would ask you to elaborate your R&D project in more detail and work on your more detailed budget and work plan. And if you reach the second phase, we will have an interview with you, and the final candidates which will be selected receive a service contract, which ranges between, if you apply as an individual company, which the service contract ranges between $40,000 and $75,000 for maximum 12 months R&D project. In some special cases where you can justify that you need 15 months, we can also grant you 15 months for your R&D project. And companies who apply with a jointly, so for example, 2 companies, they can apply for up to $110,000 and up to 18 months maximum. So here you can see our evaluation criteria. So we will evaluate the sector relevance of your project as well as the quality of our R&D project. Then we will also evaluate strongly or assess strongly the social and environmental impact of your product or your business. then the team capacities are very important for us because we think the team is are the key drivers of the R&D project, but also of the business. And just a good team ensures that the outcome of the R&D project will be financially sustainable at the end by reaching the next level of the business. And then we also think that the strategy for the financial sustainability of the R&D project and the market knowledge are also very important for us. So just some quick information on the eligibility criteria. So we will not work with entities that are looking for refinancing opportunities on debt or liabilities. Companies that have currently an active contract with Siemens Stiftung, and companies who are expecting to receive an unrestricted grant. So we are not providing unrestricted grants. We're providing a service contract, which is similar to a service agreement, which means we fund R&D projects and we expect some deliverables for you, and you're not so flexible in the utilization of the grant, for example, because it's not a grant, it's a service agreement. I think that's it for now. If you have any more questions, we can also share the presentation with you afterwards, or with Alan and the SDI team, and they can forward it to you. And I think now we can open up the floor and for any questions, or I can hand back to Alan.
Thank you so much, Sebastian and Mara, for that in-depth presentation. It was also a great eye-opener for seeing how you're helping along the journey from an R&D project to the market, which is very well aligned with STI's goal of growing the contribution of knowledge-based goods and services to the national economy through increasing domestic productivity, import substitution, and export of products that are resultant from science, technology, and innovation. So I would like to now open up the conversation, the floor, to the think tank members who might have questions. Feel free to raise your hand. If you're unable to raise your hand and speak, you can use the chat room. It's also, I'll keep tabs on it. So if you have a question, kindly raise your hand, your Zoom hand, so that we can give you the opportunity to ask. Yes, I see a hand from DK Kachtahi. Over to you, DK. Can unmute and ask a question.
Thank you so much, Alan. And thanks for the presentation from our guests. I have just a quick question. They talked about having prototypes, and it sort of appeared to me that this is a physical product. So I was wondering if the software products would be eligible in this category. Let's say you're proposing a software to improve a certain product, but your R&D is mainly on the software part. Thanks.
Thank you very much for the question.
Maybe Sebastian could take a few, and you answered maybe three. Okay. I see two more hands, so could take the next two hands. Omron, followed by Rolex. Umaru, sorry, not Omron, Umaru.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Umar. I'm a recent graduate mechanical engineer. And my question is, like, the program is addressing to Ghana and Uganda only, or other African countries also are eligible?
All right, Rolex.
I have like two questions. One is a quick one. So the application deadline for the R&D, and then also connecting to the question of prototype, they mentioned that you also have to show you've been in operation, like some evidence of revenue being generated. But someone could have been operating with the prototype, but is still like no generation of revenue. Can such companies also qualify to apply? And then the last question is about joint application. You could have someone with a company, but is not registered. I mean, this is normal for case in Uganda where you have some startups who are still at a very, very early stage, but can such companies collaborate with already registered who have been operating there and they apply jointly? And will this work? Thank you.
We could also hear from Eddie before we hand over to Sebastian and Mara. Eddie, you can go ahead.
Hi, good evening. And it's Ide, not Eddie. Okay.
My apologies. We can hear you.
All right, then. My question is the program restricted to prototypes only, that is bodabodas, or can we pitch ideas of literally bringing in electric vehicles, including the process flow that means from acquiring to having them on the road? And in terms of power, in terms of charging, charge back to the grid. So we are looking at literally bringing in the cars, not per se the prototypes and the bodabodas, but fully functional cars from manufacturers. That looking at Mercedes, cars that are already compact. So if you could, my question is that an idea that can float to Siemens? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Edie. I'll hand over back to Sebastian and Mara for those questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for all the questions. I think Mara can take the last from Edie. Let me start with the question from DK. Yes, software solutions are also possible. That's, for example, battery management system is one example, which is very important for the e-mobility sector and IoT as well. And there, so software solutions are also very welcome to apply for the call. In that scenario, that's why we also ask not just for pictures from prototypes, but also, for example, for softwares, you can also share the registration of the product, or you can share the protocol of the product. But we need to see the proof that there is already a prototype available and that the software is already working, and that you want to do the next step and develop the software further. Then Umaru, thank you very much for the question on the countries. This call is now open for Ghana and Uganda, and we plan to open a similar call by the end of this year for Kenya as well. But we will announce that as soon as we can speak more about it, coming to Q3 or Q4 of the year. Then Rolex, thank you for the questions. The call is open until August 2024 because we realized we want to give companies enough time to apply with a great R&D project and to prepare probably also for the R&D project. So you might not be eligible at that stage, or you might have not the data or the learnings or the business model that is required to get the funding from Siemens Foundation right now. But you can develop further in the upcoming 6 months and can reapply in 5 to 6 months, for example, so that with similar or other R&D project then in that case, and with then more data and with a proven business model, for example. So that's why it's open for 1.5 years. Or the other cases, we're looking for 3 to 5 companies in total. If our funding is depleted, this could we would need to close the call. But so far, it's planned to have it open as long as possible. And then on the on the question from Rolex on the prototype but with no customers. So it is essential for us because data show us that companies who have already started working, and is it even one, for example, it's easy to explain with one bike, but it could be also software or whatever. So even if you just give the software to one company, if you give the bike to one boda rider, for example, to get the feedback from the boda rider who pays for the product is an important evidence for us that the business is already at a phase where it's beyond the idea stage and beyond the just having the prototype. So that's why you need to prove that you have had customers, but that's also the in case you don't have any customers yet, you might have one or two customers in 2 to 3 months if you realize, okay, now that's an important step to take to get to be eligible for this call. And regarding the joint applications, all companies who will be involved need to be eligible following the criteria I was mentioning. But it could be the case that one company is at a very early stage, but is already eligible and applies to go with a later stage company, and that would be also totally fine for us. And then the last question from Edie, hand over to Mara.
Yes, thanks a lot. Thanks for this question, Edie. So taking into account that we are a non-profit foundation, so let's say all the work we're doing needs to have like social and environmental impact. I'm not so sure how important a Mercedes will pay, like contribute to that goal. So if you can kind of like convince us and like hand in a project where you say like, okay, fine, like it's really important to import Mercedes to have like high social impact or environmental impact in Uganda, we are open, but like, yeah, take into account what's our background and where we're coming from. So it's really about how can we kind of help people have higher incomes, like contribute to a clean environment, to better air quality, to local jobs and local manufacturing in Uganda. So that's what we mean. It's like we're a non-profit foundation. So it's not Siemens Corporate that is sponsoring that call.
Awesome.
Could I?
Thank you. Yes, Edie, you're saying something?
Yes. For me, my angle is, or rather the angle that I'm trying to pitch here is, to talk about is having a trickle-down effect from the top. If we are looking at building such an industry in Africa, rather in Uganda, in Kenya, in Ghana, we need to look at it from a point of not begin from the rural areas, not begin from the low-cost areas, and actually have it begin from a high level. We are looking at charging stations. We're looking at we're looking at charging stations. We're looking at electricity charge back to the grid. We're looking to push the whole ecosystem so that we can have a trickle-down effect. So that's the angle. My talking about Mercedes was an example. So my question was, is this only limited to prototypes, or process flows can fly in this application?
Yeah. I fully agree. That's why we don't limit. The companies can be based wherever. So it can be in Kampala or in Accra. So it doesn't have to be in the countryside. But like it clearly needs to lead. So it doesn't only have to be a prototype. Let's say if you have like your prototype already and you want to test different business models, it might be 50 bikes or 40 bikes, depending on what you hand in. And we invite companies as well to find co-financing if our ticket sizes are not big enough, so we can match funding. So we're a bit flexible there. So I fully agree. And still it needs to have high social impact. So that's just like, in the end, how maybe can a charging station look like? No, that's like accessible and cheap and like, that's what it has to do. So there's no restrictions on that. It's just, let's say, high-end individual e-mobility use is like not so much covered by that. So it doesn't have to be motorbikes. It can be like different prototypes, but mostly in high impact fields.
Got it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for those responses. You can still open for comments. For those who joined us along the way, this session is being recorded, and we'll be able to share the full link on email, as well as the presentation slides that Mara and Sebastian presented this evening. Any other questions? I see the comment section has been very active. Thank you, Mara, for those responses in the comment section. In case you're not keeping track of what's happening there, you can also check. Maybe your question might have already been answered there. So we have a few more minutes. Yes, John, Paul, Manasseh, you can proceed with your question.
Yes, thank you very much for today's session and for the great presentation. Maybe to add on what Ade had just said, if you look at the EV market today, it is still in its beginning, stages in Africa, and specifically if you look at Uganda. And if you are to do any R&D or any product, introduction into the country, we need a bit of, if I can say, create awareness. But to do that, we may need to indeed bring in, some of the finished products to first introduce them into the market. And along the way, maybe in the medium to long term, as we look at, R&D, maybe in the battery technology, in the, vehicle to grid or grid to, home, all those different kind of technologies. What I was asking is it possible to support such kind of, startups who are looking at that R&D in the medium and long term, but are starting by introducing these, EV products into the market, so that when the people already know what's going on, the transition that is going on in the world, shifting to green energy, so that after that, then we can see how to improve them, maybe making, better, batteries, which are tailored for the African market, the terrain and all that. I don't know if there is any support in that, or if we can also, apply for this same support system. Thank you very much.
Yes, let me take that question. So it's very possible to do that. Let's say other R&D projects we supported in other countries, for example, entailed introducing electric cargo bikes in a certain market. So the company purchased or imported 5 different types of cargo bikes from overseas. Let's say there's front loaders, back loaders, like certain different specifications. And then they put a testing protocol. So over a certain period of time and with like certain test protocols, they tested these 5 different prototypes they had. So 10 vehicles in total, but 5 different types. And like from the technical, so they had like technical data, like maintenance data, as well user interview and perception data, client interview and perception data. They then decided what is the best type of bike to use in that market. And then they started to explore, is it possible to produce or at least produce part of these bikes locally? So it's let's say it's a very viable process. So we're not anti-importing. It's more like I think it has to, as I said, it has to be, let's say, in a good framework of like, testing, importing. Maybe it's not so smart to import 100 vehicles from one specific type that has not been tested locally before, because it might just be not the right product. So, to do that, let's say, in a certain way. So it's possible to apply with projects like that as well.
Awesome. Aine Mbabazi, as your hand is up.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Patrick.
Yes.
Can
I say something?
Yes, proceed and say something. Then we'll have Aine Mbabazi thereafter.
Yeah, my name is Patrick Kayemba. I'm sorry I came in late in this meeting. I had some other engagement. I could be talking about something that was already talked about. And I am working for Fabio. I'm the chairman of Fabio, but at the same time, I'm actually responsible for the African Africruise e-bike in Uganda, and this is something we have worked on for the last 2-3 years, trying to do the testing and trying to do, and all the issues that have been mentioned are issues that we are grappling with. The issue of trying to see how we can be able to create an opportunity to develop some parts. Of course, we may not really be able to develop all the parts because we're part of the design of the e-bike. Then it is easy for us to know which parts of the bike. Of course, you can be able to start small. You may not be able to have all the parts of the bikes, but of course, as you move small, then you can be able to increase on your capacity as you go along and increase on the capability of the people you have, and also on the technology that could be incumbent within the country. And I think that's the only way that we can be able to go. Yes, import some parts that are complicated, but also creating partnership. For example, creating partnership in the development and recycling of the batteries, because that's a very batteries is a very big component of the whole e-mobility. For example, when you talk about e-bikes, motorcycles, and e-bikes, the bicycles themselves. So we're trying to see what collaboration that we can be able to come up with other partners that are actually able to manufacture or develop the technology of bikes. And we are already in collaboration with Vodabag, who is already involved in the development of creating e-motorcycles and all that. So that's what I wanted to contribute.
Awesome, thank you, Patrick. We can also have a further conversation outside this on the channel through STI to see how we can also properly interlink with the rest of the ecosystem. So you could drop your contact to me in the direct message, and we can take it on further from here. Aine Mbabazi, you could proceed with your contribution.
My question was the grant. The grant is expected to come with some restrictions. So I wanted to know more about the criteria considered for the grant restrictions. What are some of the criteria and the framework that would be considered for the grant restrictions? All of that are followed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Shall I take the question or shall we wait for a few more?
I think proceed and take that one as the others think of their questions.
Yes. So I think it's important to say that it's not a grant, and companies who apply expecting a grant, receiving flexible grant funding, are not eligible, for example. Then some restrictions to the funding are also we will provide you some flexibility in conducting your R&D project, but you should not overthrow the whole R&D project during the implementation. Which means if your plan is testing different battery types, you should not within the project you should not change and test, for example, off-grid solar stations. So I think those are, let's say, the biggest limitations of the funding. Apart from that, I think we are open to discuss with you what is possible and what should not be possible. But I think the biggest difference is between it's not a grant funding, it's a service contract.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions before we bring this to a wrap? Yeah, I see the chat is still going strong. Yes, Patrick, you had some other questions?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to find out whether, because from the previous, in terms of eligibility, from the previous discussions, NGOs are not eligible and all those sorts of things. I don't know whether there's been some bit of window that could be created for maybe institutions, research institutions that may not necessarily be open companies and all that. And I don't know whether there's been that flexibility or some window of going outside the real company arrangement or limited by shares or something like that. Just wanted to, just in case anyway.
Thanks, Patrick, for your question. So, taking into account that we work for the social enterprise department. So let's say social enterprises or like startups, our primary target group for the work we're doing at Siemens Foundation, because we know that actually for companies, it's quite hard to get money in this funding. There's more programs generally where not-for-profits and NGOs can apply, where companies are not eligible. So that's the reason that we really focus on for-profit companies. It's kind of the DNA of our program. It's the DNA of the work Siemens Foundation is doing.
All right.
All right. As Perez comes in with his question, Mara and Sebastian, you can drop your contacts in the chat room in case someone will need to reach out with further questions. Perez, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I think as we're sort of discussing, a question came to mind. The interesting use cases where, for example, I think private sector players have tried to manufacture batteries locally. This would have a wide range of applications and not necessarily specific to mobility. So I think the question I have for the team is, would something like that be considered where perhaps it's not necessarily specific to mobility, but something like a battery manufacturing facility, of course, which would then spur a sector like mobility, maybe perhaps assessments or R&D around that specific area?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Paris. I think if you're a company working on batteries and want to do R&D, that's already great. But if you want, if you focus with your business not on providing the batteries to mobility companies, so to e-mobility companies, but more on, for example, on stationary batteries, then your project would not be eligible for this call. So overall, if you want to develop a battery and want to experience if a business with e-mobility companies would work for your company, this would be, I think, eligible and would be interesting. But if you just want to focus on battery, on the battery manufacturing side, but your business focuses on stationary batteries for off-grid or for solar stations, but not necessarily for charging stations, then it would we would need to check the application to see whether there's a specific use case for e-mobility or not.
Yeah, thanks. It's clear.
Great. Any other question before we bring this plane to we land this plane? Yes, I remember. You can proceed and ask the question.
Are the patent capabilities you offer, do they also cover Europe, or they're only limited the patent capabilities that you can enhance or offer? Can they cover Europe and other countries, or we can only cover Uganda and Ghana?
Well, okay, thanks for the question. Let's say we don't offer, there's no patent program we're offering, but let's say if in the process of your project, you develop something you want to protect, we can see, because as Sebastian explained, there's the financial support, but there's the non-financial one. We can see maybe that you can get a consultant or somebody that can help you protect your property. And if that's then for Uganda, for Europe, for Africa, I think it has to be defined by a case-by-case basis.
Great. Do we have any more? So Mara and Sebastian have shared their emails on the chat room. You can pick them, and if in case you have any other follow-up inquiries, from this point forward, you can reach them directly. But we'll also be sharing their presentation as well as the full recording of this session within the next 1 or 2 days. Yes, Rolex, your hand is up.
Yeah, maybe one final question from me is just in case, because you mentioned in the beginning the deadline is, the call is open until August 2024. If you reach your targets of 3 to 5 companies before that time, will you pass out information? Will you inform the 2 countries that you've reached your target, even when you've not reached the August 2024? Will you share that kind of information in hand, just to know? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, I think as soon as our funding will be depleted, we see that more and more applications coming in that have a great show a great quality. We will try to lobby internally for more funding, but in case the funding is really depleted, then we would send out emails to interested companies, or would also announce that funding is depleted and the call is closed. Yes.
As well, let me add, if you have never received emails from us, so it's not a newsletter, but if we open calls or if we have webinars or reports or conferences, let's say we have an e-mobility mailing list. So if you want to be on that mailing list and you've never received emails before, just write to Sebastian or to me and we can put you on that. So it means if there's any update to the call or so, you will be informed automatically.
Great, thank you, Mar and Sebastian. All right, any more question? All right, the channels will still be open through email for any engagement you might have. I would like now to invite Mr. Paul Isaac Musasisi, who is also the chairperson of this think tank, to close this session.
Thank you, Sebastian and Mara, for a wonderful presentation and providing us with insight into the R&D landscape relating to e-mobility and the program that you have to put in place to encourage our participation as Ugandans. To my colleagues in Uganda within the ecosystem, this is a great opportunity and I invite you to take it seriously and with the emphasis on R&D geared towards enhancing local content participation in the e-mobility value chain, especially if I understood there is a great space for micromobility for EVs, but also for other types of EVs as well. Assist on increasing the stock of knowledge-based products and services developed within our borders. I really, really wish to encourage us to work towards that, given that this call speaks directly to that. We look forward to seeing how we can continue working together here with the coordination of the STI Secretariat, Alan and the team, to ensure that we make the very best of this opportunity. And I'm delighted to learn that we have time all the way till August next year to ensure that we submit competitive proposals. Thank you for joining us tonight. We look forward to seeing you in the 36th session of the tank. God bless you all. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Sebastian and Mara.
Thank you very much, Chairman and Alan. Bye.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.